All right. Welcome. Sunday night. This week is going to be quite a barn burner on every front on planet Earth. It's been quite a week. I wanted to get back to our deep dive research streams, and we're going to do that after covering a little bit of the week in review, because I believe there are rumors as we speak that U.S. military planes are headed towards Iran. There is a real estate bonanza for high net worth Miami citizens in Venezuela. We are in Iran-Contra if you substitute Nicaragua for Venezuela. All things come full circle, and the circling is very much at hand all in 1 week. And I've labeled this stream the Big Oil's biggest week ever because Venezuela has the world's #1 largest oil reserves. I believe Iran has the world's #3 largest oil reserves. Largest oil reserves by country. Let's see the list here. Let's go to Iran. Yeah. #1 and #3 in the same week. Now, look, neither of these regimes had been toppled at this point, but it's been since 1979 that we've been trying to overthrow the government of Iran. It's been since 1998 that we've been trying to overthrow the government of Venezuela. And in both regions, the Middle East and South Latin America, these have been the crown jewels. These are the Ukraine, as Ukraine is to Eurasia, Iran is to the Middle East, and Venezuela is to South America. And the implications of this are huge, not just globally and internationally, but also domestically here at home. Donald Trump has just announced a $1.5 trillion budget for the Pentagon. $1.5 trillion. So much for cutting the budget down. For perspective, all of USAID was only about 45 to 50 billion a year. So the budget for the Pentagon this year, which was already the biggest budget ever, was about $1 trillion. So 50% of the entire increase of the military in a single year, while it has still never passed an audit. The admin keeps doing big, bold action, which is great, but the actions that they're doing, we are going to be living with for generations. And while all of big business is twerking, doing touchdown dances, doing lines of cocaine, hiring prostitutes and midgets to celebrate this, wait a second. I want to first point out the comedy of it all. Let me see what I have in my bookmarks here, so if I can illustrate this. Let's start with Iran. So let's be perfectly clear about the Iran situation. Is it in U.S. interests for there to be a joint U.S., UK, Saudi, Israeli client state in Iran as opposed to the Ayatollah and the mullahs? Hard to say no, to that question. Regardless of how you feel about U.S. imperialism, regardless of how you feel about Israeli influence in the region or the world, regardless of how you feel about whatever, it's hard to argue from a simple geopolitical advantage standpoint that American markets having access to one of the most bountiful plots of land in the world, Iran, hugely geostrategic. It's the center of the risk board. You know, the center of the risk board is Middle East. Let me do it like this. Let's do map of the world with countries. And then we're gonna pull up the old risk board. Sorry, passing train. It'll be gone in a sec. All right, the center of the risk board is basically Iran and Ukraine. And this is Iran. It's the perfect position in the world with infinite resources. And so in both Iran and in Venezuela, and similarly, it's hard to argue that a change of government in Venezuela would not advantage middle-class Americans. You would have cheaper gas at the pump. American corporations would have a lower cost of goods. Sorry, I'm going to wait for this to pass a little bit as the midnight train just drives by. Where's the squishy ball? Great question. I'll get it while the train is coming. Man, this train is just taking forever to. Sami asked, where's Tulsi's comments on all this? Well, it's funny that you say that. Here was Tulsi's comments on Venezuela before while she was campaigning for president, before she linked up with the Trump administration. I'm just going to let this play.
We see how this administration right now really isn't even trying to hide the fact that they're advocating for U.S. intervention. They're actually intervening, taking actions to intervene in Venezuela, is because they're trying to get access for American oil companies into those resources that belong to the Venezuelan people. To your point, what is behind all of this?
Dark money.
You look at these corporate interests who have influence over leaders in our government to do their bidding. You have the military-industrial complex that has great influence over these very same leaders. And then you have situations and the hypocrisy that exists where they say, well, we need to go and help people in this country because of all of these human rights violations, while at the same time cozying up to countries like Saudi Arabia and actually illegally using our U.S. military and our taxpayer dollars to help Saudi Arabia wage its genocidal war in Yemen.
It's complicated.
Question will.
Sorry, I was on mute. I said it's complicated. It's complicated. It's very complicated. This is the Jack Ryan This scene is going viral now. I don't know if you guys have seen it. Yeah, I know. I had my phone on mute while my mic on mute while the train was passing by. Should be good now. Have you guys seen this Jack Ryan clip from a couple years ago on Venezuela? You guys keep saying no audio, but I think you're behind. There's definitely audio now. All right, I'm going to play this.
Question will always be, with what lens are you watching the news? Let's say you just got home from work, you get through the door, you turn on the TV, and that's what you see. What would you assume is the most major threat on the world stage? Anybody, just call it out. You don't have to raise your hand.
Definitely Russia.
Definitely Russia. That's confident. I like it. Who says Russia? Anybody agree with her? Hands? Okay, great. Who else?
China.
Stop yelling at me, but China is a good answer. Anybody? Who else? China?
North Korea?
North Korea. Any North Korea takers? And Venezuela? Anybody? Nope. Oh, yeah. One guy in the back. A little worried about Venezuela. Everybody's cool with Venezuela? No threat? Okay. Let me ask you this. Which one of these places can claim to have the largest oil deposit on the planet? More than Saudi? More than Iran? Wow. Okay. What about things like gold? More than all the mines in Africa combined? The fact is that Venezuela is arguably the single greatest resource of oil and minerals on the planet.
Oh. Wait, it cuts off the whole clip.
Most major threat on the world stage. Anybody, just call it out. You don't have to raise your hand.
Definitely.
Okay, it cuts out the best, because remember, he asked them what's the biggest threat. It's supposed to be like a CIA training school, right? So I want to play this whole thing.
Africa combined? The fact is that Venezuela is arguably the single greatest resource of oil and minerals on the planet. So, why is this country in the midst of one of the greatest humanitarian crises in modern history? Let's meet President Nicolas Reyes.
Right. It's not Nicolas Maduro. It's Nicolas Reyes.
After rising to power on a wave of nationalist pride.
So again, the CIA sees nationalism as the enemy.
In a mere 6 years, this guy has crippled the national economy by half.
Has he crippled the economy by half, or has U.S. sanctions on the economy crippled the economy by half? Open question.
He has raised the poverty rate by almost 400%.
Did he raise the poverty rate by 400%? Or did the inability of the entire country to access the international finance system raise poverty 400%? Does the fact that none of the goods they can export to the global market raise poverty by 400%? I mean, these are just things. I hate communism like the rest of us, but when you hear these statistics, keep that in mind.
Luckily for the rest of us, he's up for re-election. So, who's running against him? This is Gloria Bonalde. Now, Gloria is a history professor turned activist.
Don't you just love the CIA? Luckily, he's up for re-election. We've got this plucky girl. Looks a little bit like Maria Corina Machado, actually. And she's an academic. Can't spell CIA without academia. Turned activist. Oh.
She's running against him on a social justice platform and on the strength of, in my humble opinion, just not being an asshole. Analyst predictions, as of today, have the chances of Venezuela's total economic collapse at 87%. On the news, they'll call it a crisis. But on the world stage, they'll call it a failed state. If you've never heard that term, other examples of a failed state in recent history are Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. And if that's not bad enough news for you, well, Venezuela is also the only one of these places within 30-minute range from the U.S. of next-gen nuclear missiles. You will not hear about any of this on the news because the biggest players on the world stage do not want you to.
I mean, what is he implying here? The question is, who's the biggest threat? But he opens with, they have the most oil. They've got more gold than all of Africa combined. We'd get so rich if we took it over. What does that have to do with But the question was, who's the biggest threat? And then at the end, he shoehorns in. They're within 30 minutes from the United States of next generation nuclear missiles. Okay, well, Venezuela doesn't have nuclear missiles. And they didn't even bother with the weapons of mass destruction. They didn't say he's gassing his own people, biological warfare. They didn't say Maduro's got nukes. They said Maduro's got coke. He's got our cocaine. It's enough to make someone go crazy. But the main thing is, as Maduro is going to be fashioning his defense, and there's already very weird things going on with the defense. Okay, he's got a lawyer representing him that he doesn't even against his will. Let me show you this. Okay. So Nicolas Maduro hired Barry Pollock as his lawyer. But Bruce Fein has added himself as Maduro's other lawyer without either Maduro or Maduro's lawyer authorizing it. We have a plant on the defense team. I didn't even know this was legally possible until I read this. I'm still not sure it is. But notice we have heard nothing about cocaine since the day of the arrest. Honestly, if I wasn't posting about it every day, nobody's talking about cocaine in Venezuela anymore. Nothing has changed in Venezuela other than the head of state, the president, has been replaced by the vice president. And this is another thing is, what would you call this? It's not a military coup, top down, to effect a regime change. It's not a bottom-up color revolution to effect a regime change. It's not even really a regime change, what we did in Venezuela. And yet the regime has changed because there's a new head of state who's already doing things that the previous one wasn't. They had a political prisoner release, for example, of like 800. Let's see, prisoner release, Venezuela. I think there are 800 political prisoners. So these are, likely USAID, CIA, U.S. State Department, NGO assisted activists inside Venezuela who have been released by Delcy Rodriguez, the new head of state. The closest thing I can compare this to is an assassination. There was this thing. Does Trump take an establishment vice president like Nikki Haley so that he's in the good graces of Congress and can get things done? Or does he take someone like J.D. Vance, who's going to piss off the establishment, but is going to be assassination insurance, so to speak? Because if Trump had like the ghost of John McCain or Nikki Haley as vice president, then there's more incentive to assassinate him, to put in a vice president who's very different. What we've done in Venezuela is basically assassinated their president. So it's not a military coup. It's not a color revolution. We've just kind of assassinated the president so that the vice president, who we thought was a better negotiating partner for us, could be put in charge. That's the way I see it in my head. The prosecution is complete bullshit. Maduro is not a cocaine warlord. So we might as well have just taken him out and shot him. Except the only difference here is now he's got a a defense in a New York court. So whether the bullet killed him or it simply delayed him for 3 years, we'll see. At the same time, you have, I can't imagine what it's like in Venezuela right now of how people are reacting to this. But remember that in addition to basically assassinating Maduro, did you guys read this thing that's been going around? So let's see. Sonic. Everyone's talking about this. Let's see. I think the New York Post covered it too. New York Post, Venezuela, Sonic. U.S. used powerful mystery weapon that brought Venezuelan soldiers to their knees during Maduro raid. Witness account. Now, I don't even know if this is true. And neither does the New York Post, but they ran with it anyway because it's such good propaganda. And Caroline Leavitt, the press secretary, posted it to her account. Press secretary at the White House with all American flags. This account from a Venezuelan security guard to Nicolas Maduro is absolutely chilling and explains a lot about why the tone across Latin America suddenly changed. Security guard, on the day of the operation, we didn't hear anything coming. We were on guard, but suddenly all our radar systems shut down without any explanation. The next thing we saw were drones, a lot of drones, flying over our positions. We didn't know how to react. So what happened next? How was the main attack? Security guard. After those drones appeared, some helicopters arrived. There were very few. I think barely 8 helicopters. From those helicopters, soldiers came down, but a very small number, maybe 20 men. But those men were technologically advanced. They didn't look like anything we've fought against before. And then the battle began? Yes, but it was a massacre. We were hundreds, but we had no chance. They were shooting with such precision and speed. It seemed like each soldier was firing 300 rounds per minute. We couldn't do anything. And your own weapons, didn't they help? No, not at all. Because it wasn't just the weapons. At one point, they launched something. I don't know how to describe it. Like a very intense sound wave. Suddenly, I felt like my head was exploding from the inside. We all started bleeding from the nose. Some were vomiting blood. We fell to the ground, unable to move. And your comrades, they managed to resist? No, not at all. Those 20 men, without a single casualty, killed hundreds of us. We had no way to compete with their technology, with their weapons. I swear I've never seen anything like it. We couldn't even stand up after the sonic weapon or whatever it was. So do you think the rest of the region should think twice before confronting the Americans? Without a doubt. I'm sending a warning to anyone who thinks they can fight the United States. They have no idea what they're capable of. After what I saw, I never want to be on the other side of that again. They're not to be messed with. I mean, who knows if this is true? I mean, these questions like, so you think the rest of the region should think twice before confronting the Americans? That makes me feel like this account is not very credible. This sounds like something the U.S. military would plant as a rumor. So when this post goes viral and gets 30 million views, and everyone in Mexico and Colombia and Iran sees it, they're like, oh, holy shit. All right, we should give up our oil too without a fight. But let's just take the best case scenario that it is true and that we are stunting on this. We didn't just capture Maduro on bullshit prosecution charges. The two charges are conspiracy to distribute cocaine and possession of machine guns. As the leader of a foreign country, I know we covered this last stream, but how is Maduro possessing machine guns in Caracas a violation of New York law or U.S. federal law? But guys, not only did we arrest the president of Venezuela on bullshit charges, but we slaughtered hundreds of people to do it. We killed hundreds of people, fathers who have wives and children, to effectuate this arrest. This is not as clean as people are celebrating. Like, this was not, a nonviolent arrest where we just got in the dead of night, put him in a black bag, read him his Miranda rights. Yeah, they basically used like that weapon from Stranger Things, it sounds like. Let's see if I can find it on YouTube. Stranger Things sound weapon 11. Yeah, like this thing. So, like, this girl in Stranger Things has these powers, these superpowers, but she gets disabled by this military sound weapon. And see how it causes her nose to bleed? So it sounds like, now what's funny is like this weapon only came out on TV like 2 weeks ago, and this account like perfectly matches the weapon used in the finale of Netflix's biggest show ever. But I'm thinking about this and it's like, wait a second. We killed hundreds of people to issue a bullshit arrest. And we're like, the national mood. I'm sorry to keep doing movie scene to movie scene, but it's like, the heck is it? Snapping necks. The heck is that movie? Movie scene. The heck is it? Sorry. You guys know, what am I thinking about? It's the one with that entering the club. Oh, MacGruber. That's what it is. It feels very MacGrubery. Like, we got this all-star badass team.
Are you guys strapped in?
Yeah, hang him and bag him, just like old time. Let's go.
Shit. I gotta go deal with the brass.
Fuck the brass. Let's go.
Hang tight.
And we're just like blowing everything up as we go, like with this badass attitude.
Filled with American heroes with over 100 years of combined combat experience and a whole lot of brotherhood. And no, you can't ride in the trunk, bud. Because the trunk is filled with over 75 pounds of homemade C4 explosive that I personally packed in there with my own two.
Like, there's so much collateral damage. And at some point, like, the world is going to wake up and remember that. And I don't. But yet we're swaggering around like.
For the record, I think this is a really stupid move.
Don't worry. I'm going to keep a real low profile.
May I take your coat?
Nope.
Your car stereo?
Nice try.
Okay,
It's like Trump this week. It's like, yeah, okay, it looks badass, but like, you were supposed to hand your keys to the valet. You just parked your car. in the front of the club? Are we supposed to be diplomatic? And okay, I know on the one hand, it's like, fuck these motherfuckers, but like, Venezuela was not a national security threat. And we just went in and murdered hundreds of Venezuelans. We just murdered them. And then as soon as like the terms of us relieving sanctions on Venezuela and chilling on Venezuela has nothing to do with their cocaine. It has to do with their oil. Notice that? We're stealing 30 to 50 million gallons or barrels of oil. Well, what does that do with Maduro's arrest? Well, why did we kill hundreds of Venezuelans? Well, it's for the oil. But that's not what the warrant was for. And this gets me to it. If the point of this is that when Venezuela in 1998 expropriated illegally by nationalizing its oil interests, American interests, then make an indictment out of that. Now, while this is happening, is there a George Floyd mashup? What's like the best George Floyd riot mashup? This sounds like a good playlist for later. It's 2:44 a.m. You're thinking about your life. All right. George Floyd riot montage. I don't know. Let's see. All right, this is what it looked like. Everything's on fire, Molotov cocktails. And we got in a big fight with the media, with the left about calling them riots instead of protests. So like, just like with Venezuela, it's in America's interests. It's in our interests. If you've got kids, they are more likely to have a profitable, it'll be easier for them to buy houses. It'll be easier for them to afford college if there is a regime change in Venezuela, if there is a regime change in Iran. But it's interests versus ethics. And it's one thing if you're doing this in some universal principle or even in America first way, but the indictment doesn't say it's because they expropriate our oil. And in Iran, it's just so funny because what do we call what's happening in Iran? Just like with Venezuela, your kids will be better off if there is a U.S. client state, better off financially, better off in a lot of ways. But what Trump declared was that, let's see, what was the exact, I bookmarked these all. Trump, Iran. So a couple of days ago, this is the big thing, was, okay, so I'll just do it like this. Trump, Iran, protester, military. Interview. Yeah, I think it was right here.
Are you following the protesting that is taking place all over the country of Iran?
Yeah,
now?
I'm following it very closely.
And have you read that the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has a plan B to go to Russia?
Or someplace, yeah. He's looking to go someplace.
Do you believe that Iran, you think the country is on the verge of collapsing?
Well, it could be. I mean, what they've done is in the past, they've started shooting the hell out of people, and all of a sudden people without any weapons whatsoever are standing there and you have machine guns gunning them down, or they take them to prisons and then hang them and kill them. So they played rough, and I said, if they do that, we're going to hit them very hard. Well, we're going to hit them hard. We're ready to do it. If they do that, we're going to hit them hard. And
so this line is what my current feed is playing out all around this line. 50 from JB Marconi. Sunday Fun Day. Thanks, Mike. Thank you, JB Marconi. Very, Very much appreciate the support. As to your question, KRob04, Maduro wasn't elected, right? Wrong. This is what we spent all of last stream on talking about, which is that Maduro won the 2024 election against Maria Corina Machado. We declared Maria Corina Machado the president of the country, and then as soon as we black bagged Maduro, Trump said Maria Corina Machado does not have the support or respect to run the country. If we claim she won 70% of the vote and Maduro stole it with fraud, how does someone who has 70% of the vote not have the respect and support to run the country? Maduro won the election. Okay? Just is what it is. I don't know about the fraud situation, but it doesn't look like Maria Corina Machado really won that election. And there were only two people in that election. Because our own people 1 year later are saying she can't run the country, even though we declared her president. Now, what Trump said here about 4 days ago-ish was that if Iran shoots any of the protesters, we will militarily invade or do airstrikes on Iran. So immediately what that did is that created a market, a giant political market for ratcheting up the numbers of dead protesters. Because the more dead protesters in Iran you can cite, the more Trump is under pressure to do military strikes on Iran. So as soon as Trump said that, you kill a protester, we invade Iran. Everybody who wants to invade Iran says, my cousin is a dead protester. My dog's nephew's goldfish is a dead protester. And what I'm seeing right now are all these wildly conflicting reports. I don't know what to believe. I think that the mullahs suck. I don't want an Islamo-fascist state or whatever in Iran. At the same time, I think it's clear that we're only after the oil and the natural resources, and that the people who are taking up against Iran are not going to be sovereign. And it's not even a pro-democracy protest. This is another thing that's so funny, and I guess I'll start here with this. What the people are protesting in the streets for is to bring back the monarchy. Thousands flood Tehran streets chanting for the monarchy. They want the king back, the Shah, or his son. But because there's no appetite for democracy whatsoever, see, the Shah will be a puppet. So what people want, like it's so naked what's happening right now. And as much as I hate communism, and as much as I think that like the Ayatollah and the mullahs completely suck, I'm watching what's happening and I'm going, okay, but it's George Floyd. You can't call these peaceful protesters. Okay? The Iranians are mass producing Molotov cocktails. They are setting everything on fire. Government buildings, mosques. Look at this. This is a beautiful mosque burning with the pro-monarchy protesters all dressed in black, you'll note. Let me do Iranian here. Okay. Breaking: Iranian security forces unload ammo on protesters. So this is supposed to be contextualized as a brutal crackdown, that there's live fire. But the protesters are setting everything on fire. They're setting everything on fire. And not only that, let me show you them launching the Molotov cocktails at everyone. Everything. They're setting the buildings on fire. They're setting the cars on fire. What is the difference between this and this? Like corporate's asking what the difference is between this picture and this picture. Look, they're launching Molotov cocktails at all the cars. If I did that to federal law enforcement, I would expect to be shot with live fire. If I launched a fiery ballistic projectile at a military or police officer, I would expect to be shot. I am no longer a peaceful protester. Although I guess they're saying that this is that Iran Spectator, they're saying they're not, but they're saying they're using Molotov cocktails, they're throwing everything on fire. So this is one of these things where it's like interest versus ethics. I'm okay with dirty work, but I want honesty within dirty work. Does that make sense? I understand that to make an egg, you need to make an omelet, you have to crack a bunch of eggs. But I don't lie to you and tell you that this omelet is made out of, golden nose hairs or whatever. We've cracked the eggs in the process of making the omelet. I don't want to be lied to on the menu. I will make the decision for myself about whether or not I want to have an omelet. But I don't want to be told it's an omelet and then find out, you use some weird synthetic, I don't know, gefilte fish. And I feel like what's happening on both fronts is like, there's like a Team America World Police. America, fuck yeah. And it's big dick energy. We're doing Caracas-a-Lago, Tehran-a-Lago. And like the implications of this are going to be with us for many, many, many years. And in the heady heat of all of this, where you have, I think even John Brennan was like cheering on Trump. And I don't know if he's doing that to stave off prosecution. Let's see. Did he say?
From what you heard in that news conference, how do you describe overall this operation?
Well, Alex, we're
only 12 hours afterward, but it's clear that it was a tactical success. U.S. Special Forces, U.S. military, U.S. intelligence community are second to none in terms of their capabilities. And going in there and snatching Maduro and his wife, I think is certainly consistent with my assessment of the continued professional capabilities of the CIA and the U.S. military. But that was a tactical success. And I think a lot of questions now are, what's the day after plan? And they were very vague during that press conference.
Okay. It's a little not to the point. But, okay, China will take the oil if we don't. Okay, well then make the charges about the oil, Daniel M. Cody. This is like, Democrats arguing, well, if we don't win, Trump does. So then let's indict Trump on a bunch of bullshit charges. It's like, well, wait. That is not a precedent you want to establish. And there are dirty things you can do within grounds, because that's Trump's whole position, right? Let me put like music on for 1 sec while I pull something up. 1 sec.
Cold bones, yeah, that's my love. She hides away like a ghost. Ooh, does she know that we bleed the same? Ooh, don't cry.
Yeah, well, I think to your point, right? Who was it who said it in the chat? Swanee girl. There can't be court charges about the oil. Exactly. Well, that's my point. Is because we can't get him that way, we had to make up a lie about some way to get him. And I'm sorry, but I've spent my short but prolific career as a public figure calling out these things when we're being lied to do dirty work, because only the lie gives us the predicate to go in there. They wanted to get Trump. They couldn't get him through the election. It's not illegal to vote for Trump, so that's why they had to cook up Russiagate. Venezuela nationalized the oil. Not necessarily illegal, though. So they had to cook up cocaine. Mr. Sargent says, Venezuela and Iran, if both are successful, mean more Russian oil and sales to China. On that score, Russia can't be too upset about these operations. Maybe. But other countries aren't going to like sit still in the face of this. This is like, I'm not sure that just like slaughtering 200 innocent Venezuelans on the way to capturing their elected president and setting him up on bullshit charges. Congratulations, they're afraid of you now. But they probably hate you more than ever. And people who were on the fence about it are probably hardened against you. And again, Smart Mac, as many times as you put it in the chat, Robin's Nest 66, the charges are not about Smartmatic. If you had the goods on Smartmatic, or even a hypothesis, put that in the indictment. You rigged elections with Smartmatic and prove that in court. I can't cheerlead this. This is everything that I've talked about prior U.S. administrations and prior foreign governments doing to create noble lies as predicates to do dirty deeds. And Trump is like usually honest about dirty deeds. In Syria, he said, we're in there for the oil. We're taking the oil. The U.S. Diplomacy Corps was aghast about it when he said we're taking the oil in 2017 with Syria. I love that he said it because gone was the noble lie that we're trying to put democracy in fucking Syria. I could at least make an honest assessment at that point, trusting my government that they weren't lying to me, that the reason we're in Syria is for the oil. There is no pretense of setting up an NGO-ocracy. We want to put in a vassal state if possible. If not, we're just going to have the military take control of a third of the country so that we can have a higher GDP. But this is not that. And now infrastructure is like being built on this. Did you guys watch this oil company thing this week where he got all the oil execs in? Halliburton, Exxon, Chevron, bunch wildcatters, Spanish firms. And the thing that the big takeaway during the public portion of that was this word. This was the word. Uninvestable. That was the word. Now I want to focus on this for a second, okay? Because this is why I'm trying to elucidate the complications of what's happening right now. Team Trump wants Caracas-Alago, called Venezuelan real estate what Palm Beach real estate was 50 years ago. And this whole meeting, let's see if I can find it on YouTube. This whole Trump oil company meeting. He gets them all in the room. Historic meeting.
By
Monday.com, the opposite of any work.
While the ad slowed here. So, okay.
far, I would say. And
gets them all in the room. All these guys. The heads of the biggest companies in the world. They're all gathered around to discuss how best to seize Venezuela's oil and how much money we're all going to make by doing it. Let me try an exercise here real quick. I'm going to go to the transcript. I'm going to control F for the word cocaine. Up. 0 hits for cocaine. The thing that allows us to steal the oil, that they were a cocaine distribution point. How about narcotics? Nope, no hits for narcotics. How about drugs? Okay. The American military stopped the flow of drugs. Okay, so we have 3 references to drugs. We're stopping the flow of drugs. Okay, you gotta love this. I gotta blow this up. Okay, I gotta. The fucking irony. Again, the cocaine in Venezuela was our cocaine. And we're going to go a little deeper into that tonight. So stopping Maduro will not stop the cocaine at all. And Venezuelan cocaine is not even it's not even the main shipment, as we covered in cocaine. Daniel Noboa in Ecuador is the main shipment of cocaine to the United States. But he's an ally. So we like that cocaine because it's capacity building for us. The problem is there are all these kidnappings. Those damn Venezuelans. They were bringing kidnappings to the United States. Maybe not the thing you want to run on this week. Were they kidnapping people or did we kidnap them? And shoot 200 plus dudes just sitting there. But the watchword was uninvestable. As the chief of ExxonMobil, the biggest oil company in the world, says Venezuela is currently uninvestable as he calls for significant changes to the country's legal system. Hey, stop speaking my love language. Do you guys know what this means? Who knows? What enterprising student in the chat of all of our streams that we've done on this topic knows what I'm about to drive at right now? Let's do a little Jeopardy music. What program have we covered before that what he just said will necessitate? Give you a hint. 3 words. Yes. Okay. The 2 winners in the chat that I saw, Catherine's a close third. Spiral Bewilder, of course. A+, and QE Infinity got it too. Yeah, and Slickson and Daniel and Cody. Yes. What you are looking at right here is the purpose of USAID and U.S. State Department rule of law programs. Programs to change the legal system to make the country more investable to the donor drafter class. This sentence. Now, the argument here, let's see if how they describe it in the clip. Because I watched this live with my jaw like. In a way, I know there was like a dark room deal worked out in the background after the press left. They met for like another hour and a half or 2 hours. But for like an hour and a half, it was like, this feels vaguely illegal for me to be seeing this, because they're talking out in the open about like the kind of things I usually have to catch people on like private Zoom calls to get clips out of. But let's see how, let me just play this and see if this is the one.
We have a very long history in Venezuela. In fact, we first got into Venezuela back in the 1940s. We've had our assets seized there twice. And so you can imagine to re-enter a third time would require some pretty significant changes from what we've historically seen here and what is currently the state. If we look at the legal and commercial constructs and frameworks in place today in Venezuela, today it's uninvestable. And so significant changes have to be made to those commercial frameworks, the legal system. There has to be durable investment protections, and there has to be a change to the hydrocarbon laws in the country. We're confident that with this administration and President Trump working hand in hand with the Venezuelan government, that those changes can be put in place.
USAID ain't going away anytime soon. What you just heard is what we do in every country, except we're going to need like maybe the largest ever for a single country rule of law program undertaking in our lifetime. If indeed this assassination is successful and Delcy Rodriguez is a pliant puppet. Do you guys remember the George Soros swindle of the century in Mongolia that we did? The George Soros Mongolia, I wonder if the news has covered this. It's Mongolia, the Oyu Tolgoi mine affair. This was the largest mine on copper mine on planet Earth, the Oyu Tolgoi mine. And it was discovered, I think, in 2003. The largest copper mine in the world, copper and gold. And once it was discovered, the American Bar Association, with tens of millions of dollars in money from USAID, its spin-out cousin, the World Justice Project, the CIA cutout called the Asia Foundation, and George Soros's Open Society Foundation all got together and co-drafted something called the 2006 Minerals Law. Mongolia, I think it was 2006 Minerals Law. The Minerals Law of Mongolia in 2006. And the purpose of the Minerals Law, drafted substantially by effectively the CIA, USAID, and the donor drafter class, who would then exploit the Oyu Tolgoi mine, because those mining rights ended up going to Oyu Tolgoi, which was heavily invested in by George Soros, who helped draft the Minerals Law to change the legal system to make it much more commercially and legally favorable to the investing companies. So you had the U.S. Embassy pressure the government, the USAID mission in the country pressure the government, which is effectively like having the U.S. military pressure the government. You had the World Bank pressure the government to do this. You had the IMF pressure Mongolia to do this. You had all the swarm of Mongolian civil society organizations, trade associations, lawyers, engineers, medical workers, sanitation workers striking in the streets to sign the mineral law. They're all on USAID payroll, or they're a part of organizations funded by USAID or Soros or the US State Department, so that you could fluff before the scene, if you know what I'm getting at. Fluff. You guys know, I learned about this from Orgasmo. You guys ever see the first South Park movie? The Matt Parker, Trey Stone, the Mormon guys who go into porn? Orgasmo. There's that scene with the fluffer. A fluffer is like someone who, gets the organ ready for the scene, so they don't have performance anxiety. This is what these rule of law programs do. They're fluffers for the donor drafter class portfolio companies, whether they be metals and mining companies, oil companies, agriculture companies, so that when they go in hard and they get the money shot. Don't need a bunch of, sweet words in their ear. Don't need, 10, 20 years of foreplay. That's what the USAID is a fluffer for it. I don't watch this shit. I was 14. It just stuck with me. It's funny, by the way. It's a funny movie. But the point is, what they're calling for are the fluffers to make it commercially viable. We need rule of law programs. So guess what? Our big enemy here, last year, the World Justice Project, who fluffed the censorship courts in Brazil, who worked with Alexandre de Moraes and Luis Barroso to get X kicked out of the country, to have their disinformation flaggers take out all the Bolsonaro supporters using rule of law against disinformation to fluff it for Lula for the election. Well, they ain't going out of business anytime soon. You are going to have Republicans in Congress. Republicans, Lindsey Graham, John Thune. They're going to be saying, well, I don't care that the World Justice Project is running all these operations to destroy Trump supporters and Trump allies in Hungary and Poland, in the UK, in France, in Brazil. We need them for Venezuela. In fact, we need to give them a bigger budget than ever. I wonder what the World Justice Project has to say about Venezuela. Just morbid curiosity. I don't know if it's one of their regions. Combating disinformation in Venezuela. The rule of law programs. Since its launch in October 2019, when was the Bay of Piglets attempt to kidnap Maduro the first time? Wasn't it July 2019? Venezuela rule of law programs. The Brookings stuff is going to be interesting. Now, USAID has been kicked out of Venezuela, so we've had to run these things through like neighboring Colombia and the like. But man, there's going to be the point is to I can't think of a non-sexual analogy. I can't think of a non-sexual analogy because we are going to be fucking it so hard. Like, this is not just a military thing. This is the point that I'm getting at. You guys saw that the $1.5 trillion budget. Are we calling it a defense budget still? Are we still calling this a defense budget? We didn't bomb Nigeria out of defense. We didn't gun down 200 Venezuelans in defense. We're not launching airstrikes at Iran at defense. We changed the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War. This is a war budget. This is a $1.5 trillion war budget. But it's including it. Because they're not calling it a war budget. It's funny, they were really proud of saying it's the Department of War now, not the Department of Defense. But the Council of Foreign Relations is still calling it a defense budget. Well, here's the problem with that. When you have a $1.5 trillion war budget, but the war can't be exploited without an NGO budget, you're going to need a matching NGO budget to do this part of the work. How do you get the people of Mongolia to turn over all of their minerals to George Soros? You can do it basically two ways. You can put a gun to their head and say, I'm going to murder you. Or you can put money in their pocket and say, I'm going to bribe you. The best is a combination of both. If you say yes, we'll put money in your pocket. That way you'll be happy. Good little boy. If you don't, we're gonna hit you with a fucking sonic death ray weapon. Some sci-fi shit and kill you. They'll be really resentful if you just do the gun to the head. They're going to try to undermine you, partner with other countries. Sure, we'll do just enough to not get killed, but we're going to try to put a knife in your back as soon as you're not looking. Well, the way to cure that resentment is to bribe them with NGO money, with USAID money, with U.S. State Department foreign assistance money, with Development Finance Corporation money, with World Bank money, which we fund. So make no mistake, the military part of this operation is the tiny, tiny first part of it. The 90 years after that is the USAID NGO sticky blobcraft part of the operation, which we are now massively expanding. Do you know how many laws are going to need to be changed in fucking Iran? What's the equivalent of like the Iranian parliament? Let's see. Let's get an image of what it looks like in the Iranian. Here you go. Do you think the laws these guys currently have in Iran are ideal for Shell and British Petroleum and Chevron and ExxonMobil? Do you think they're ideal for the metals and mining companies? No. They're all going to need to be changed. Whatever new puppet government is put in is going to have to answer to their own people, lest they revolt. Remember, that's how we got in this problem in the first place, was in 1979, the people fucking revolted because they blamed their politicians for selling them out to foreign powers. We are now going to be putting in a class of people who are going to sell out their government to foreign powers. So the people are going to hate their new politicians, if not immediately, over time. How do you deal with that without U.S. aid? How do you deal with that without the U.S. State Department Foreign Assistance Program? How do you deal with that without a complex, blobby web of NGOs involved in bribery, weird little self-licking ice cream cone, look the other way, fraud operations to keep enough people on payroll that they'd rather take your money and face the wrath of their own people than fulfill the nationalistic desires of their own people to exploit their own natural resources and keep the oil in-house for themselves, keep the gas in-house for themselves, keep the natural resources in-house for themselves. Mr. Sargent says you deal with it by letting the locals do it. Well, if it were up to the locals, they're sitting on the oil. They don't want to get ripped off. This is why we don't leave it to the locals. We have local frontmen. Do you see what I'm getting at here? And not only that, you're going to have to deal with all the regional allies. All these conflicts are regionalized. Notice the Ukraine war is not just about USAID programs and funneling hundreds of millions of dollars of aid to Iran. We regime changed Romania because the incoming winner of the first round election in Romania didn't want to send arms to Ukraine. So we had a medal in Ukraine. We had a medal in Romania to ensure stabilization of Ukraine. Why did we spend hundreds of millions of dollars to rig the elections in Moldova? Well, it's because the opposition party in Moldova didn't want to help Ukraine. So we had to meddle in Moldova. Why did the Biden administration run the coup against the PIS party in Poland? Well, in part, hesitancy in Ukraine. So same thing in Slovakia against Robert Fico. Same thing in the Czech Republic. Same thing in Hungary against Orban. I've just listed 6 other countries we had to meddle in just to ensure that Ukraine remained investable to BlackRock and JP Morgan Chase and Visa. What do you think's going to happen in Venezuela? We're going to need to triple our USAID budget. This is what Republicans will argue. Republicans will argue. Not Democrats. Democrats will too, obviously. But we have a for the next at least 10 months, we have a Republican majority in Congress, a Republican majority in the Senate. We had a 40-day government shutdown over the budget last time, arguing in part over largely the international affairs budget. But you've just 10x the number of Republicans who are funded by big oil, big war, big chamber of commerce. We're going to say the international affairs budget has to be bigger than ever. It should match. It's got to match the military budget because the military is only the tiny part of this. So while you're celebrating this win for the donors puppets, like you're creating hungry dogs. And you can expect to see, I think, some of the enthusiasm for the achievements of the first year of the Trump term to have less enthusiasm on the Hill. There's going to be this urge to plant victory. We got rid of a bunch of waste, fraud, and abuse. Now we can bring a little back because we got rid of so much. We're going to need it for Venezuela. We're going to need it for Iran. We're going to need it for Colombia. We're going to need it for all the surrounding Arab states. Because how are we going to make Iran's allies, like Qatar, happy in light of this? We've been flirting with Doha Alago. Trump and Qatar have gotten quite close. Over 1.2 trillion in economic deals. We're like giving Qatar like basically NATO status after Israel's strikes in Qatar for supposedly housing Hamas fighters, I think, or Hezbollah fighters. Iran and Qatar are each other's closest allies. What's going to happen if the rule of law in Iran shuts Qatar out? Because that's what they're going to want to do. They share the same fucking oil fields, guys. Iran, Qatar, oil fields. Or it's a gas. I think it's the big gas fields. I think it's called the South. Called the South field. Is this the one? Here you go. The South Pars North Dome gas condensate field. Okay. This is the largest natural gas field by far in the entire world, with ownership shared between Iran and Qatar. What do you think is going to happen to that sharing agreement in a regime change? To make Iran investable in the process of the significant changes to the country's legal system, you have to navigate this. And Qatar is a tiny, tiny, tiny little place with a huge amount of money for bribes and are pretty competent at diplomacy. And you're gonna run into all this as our NGO plex with our tax money, maybe more than ever. I mean, who knows how this is going to go? They're going to argue, and even if it's not that much year one, even if they don't triple the equivalent of USAID and just park it in state or something, if they're not successful year one, they're going to have to triple it in year two and say the only reason it's failing is because you're not throwing more NGO money at it. How much money did they say that Doge saved the U.S. government? Doge, was it 200 billion saved? I think they said it was 200 billion or something like that Doge saved. Well, okay, 2025, say defense budget, even though it's war budget. Okay, so the 2025 budget was 850 billion. 2026 budget was 1 trillion, right? I guess that'll be the 2027. The 2026 one was 1 trillion, I believe, right? Yeah, it was 1 trillion for the budget for this year. So we saved 220 billion with Doge, or 200 billion with Doge. We're spending another 500 billion just on the military alone. And we're going to need to make the NGO funding commensurate so that we can manage the client states we're creating with our military. What we are doing is going to mean spending so much money, more money than we've ever spent, and paying it out to contractors and NGOs at best, as well as the military industrial complex, to do this. I don't know how I can celebrate, given everything I've been working for over the past years. How do you guys feel in the chat about this? Before we change topics, I just had to get this off my chest because as I'm seeing this in the news feed, and again, all week you're going to be hearing about the number of casualties of Iranian protesters, and you're not going to see videos of you are going to see videos of them lighting government buildings on fire and lighting cars on fire and throwing Molotov cocktails, but you're going to be told they're peaceful protesters. And look, you can make the argument. This is where it sucks. It's like, yes, they are oppressed by like a Shiite Islamic crazy group. Yes, it is brave to oppose that. But they're not. These are not midnight vigils holding candles in protest. This is an insurrection, which is okay. You could argue. But be honest about it and call it that. Our country was born in an insurrection against the British. You know, we don't remember our own history as peaceful protesters against the British. No, we owned it. It was an insurrection. It was a rebellion. We fought a war. But when you put it like that, it makes U.S. military assistance and drone striking Iran seem a little different when you contextualize them as, because previously many of the protests in Iran have been peaceful. This one is not. And you can argue that it's noble. You can argue it's definitely in America's interests. But we are likely going to be doing military strikes on Iran in order to put even more pressure on its government to collapse, because that is the goal. It is to induce the collapse of the government. And while there are protests, putting military pressure from up top will not only embolden more protests, but it'll also reduce the number of security forces in the streets who can take on the protesters, and it will make more of the police and military want to flee the country for their own lives and to save their own families and either give up and surrender and plead for mercy, or to stand down so that they don't get sonic weaponed by the U.S. So if you're a betting person, I would bet on some military action by the U.S. to support these protests if they keep going for another 2 weeks. And you're going to be seeing a lot of pressure on President Trump about the number of dead protesters. And those same accounts will be, on the one hand, glorifying the burning of mosques and government buildings, showing the violence, and on the other hand, contextualizing them as nonviolent, peaceful protesters when those same rioters get shot. And that is the same kind of schizophrenia I remember in vivid detail with George Floyd, where it was like, listen, it's fucked up. We don't want the military shooting peaceful protesters or killing people without reading them their Miranda rights, or if they weren't a threat to them. But that's not what happened with George. And these are not peaceful protesters. So it's complicated. In our interests, yeah, fine. In our ethics, much, much dicier story. And I already see what's coming, and I'm not. Count me out of the rah-rah brigade on it. There's a right way to do things and a wrong way, and when I see people turning their country into a fiery inferno, you got to miss me with the peaceful protester thing. If you're honest about it, then we can talk about it. But and we've talked about this so many times. I mean, this is the tactic we do everywhere. Do you remember how many times we've covered this 2014 Maidan? Before and after, I think the BBC had the best pictures of this. Okay. Here's what. Now, the whole time we heard about Maidan's Ukraine, Maidan 2014 peaceful protests. Right? The Wikipedia notes the scores of protesters. They renamed it the Revolution of Dignity because it was so undignified. They had to call it Dignity. 1984 to 180 it because it was so obviously depraved that they had to call it its opposite. Yeah, peaceful protests. Peaceful. And that's peaceful. Look at this. They peacefully gained control over its government buildings. You guys see this? So. They peacefully gained control over its government buildings. But you have a democratically elected government, and rioters just took control over the government buildings. They seized it by force as soon as the riot police left. And the media would just cover it as peaceful protests. It's when the Ukrainian government cracked down, we threatened them with sanctions, the government. We're going to bankrupt the country. Peaceful protests. Now, what do the protests actually look like? Here was the Maidan Square before. Here it was after. The streets before, the streets after. Same street before, same street after. Here, look at, they set it ablaze to thwart police. These were our peaceful protesters in Ukraine. I don't give a damn why you did it. Aren't you supposed to be peaceful? Now, what happened? Peaceful protests. Same article. It looks like Iran, doesn't it? Now, what happened was, let me see if I can just pull up. Did U.S. officials, representatives, I'll move this up a little bit, threaten to sanction the Yanukovych regime in Ukraine in 2014 if its government cracked down on peaceful protesters during the 2014 Maidan Square protests. You'll see it was the same thing in Ukraine in 2014, which got us into the now Ukraine-Russia war that we are spending billions, hundreds of billions on. But the blowback didn't come until a couple years later. Well, I mean, it came 6 months later with the Crimea, but now we're really paying for it. And it was the same thing. We wanted to get the Yanukovych government in Ukraine out in 2014 because he sided with the Russians on a trade deal instead of the EU. I'm going to let this run, but you're going to see what we did is we put a George Floyd riot in their face and said, if you don't let them take over your government buildings, if you don't let them kill your police officers, if you don't let them take over your Treasury building, your police precincts, your Parliament building, if you touch one hair on their head, well, then we're going to bomb you and bankrupt you. So what is the government to do? In the face of these George Floyd riots in your own country, total lawlessness, killings, arson, sabotage, road blockages, mass mayhem and death, you're told to either sit there and take the death, or Uncle Sam is going to run in with a gun and hit you with a sci-fi sonic fucking death ray while kicking you off of the international finance system, seizing your assets held in U.S. Federal Reserve banks, kicking you off the SWIFT system, So your two choices are three choices are death, and flee the country in a helicopter. In the face of a George Floyd riot, which is what we felt in 2020 when that was the gun that we were put under by Democrats. Remember, Trump wanted to do the Insurrection Act and have the military quell the protests, but then backed off because we don't want to be seen as cracking down on protests with force, because that would have blowback in the election. Here you go. Yes, U.S. officials explicitly raised sanctions as a consequence if Yanukovych's government used force against protesters. So while the protesters used force against the government, if the government used force to crack down on the protesters, then they get assassinated by Uncle Sam. That is what is playing out in Iran right now. Yes, the mullahs suck. Yes, the people are not free. Yes, the Ayatollah is a dick. Yes, we would all have more in our 401k and our kids would have cheaper gas, more likely to be able to afford a home, more likely to be able to afford health care if we had a regime change. A little bit. They would be a little bit better off, but they would almost undoubtedly be better off. We are doing now in Iran, or at least I expect us to be doing that. Certainly Trump threatened to do it. And I believe I even saw reports from just tonight that U.S. military airplanes are now encircling Iranian airspace. Yes, as of 4 hours ago, U.S. Air Force planes are now entering Iranian airspace. At least this is what's being reported. Israel's Channel 14 reported after the White House published a message saying that God protects the forces of this country. Reports have emerged of U.S. aircraft flying near Iranian airspace. B-52 bombers have also taken off from our largest military base in the region, which is Qatar. That's our air base, but it's on Qatar's territory. No way the U.S. is refueling airplanes inside Iranian airspace while striking Iranian targets. The U.S. Air Force just entered Iranian airspace. I don't know. But I believe Trump had a tweet on this. Trump tweet on Iranian protests. Trump reposts Lindsey Graham. Brutality against his own people will not go unchallenged. So I should have named this stream Big Oil's biggest week ever. I should have named it Lindsey Graham's. What was the tweet? But what I'm trying to say is even if we get regime change, there's no way to enjoy the spoils of the regime change without nation building. We've never done nation building to build nations. The only reason we've ever done nation building, ever, is for this. Because immediately post regime change, you still have the old regime's rules, laws, regulations, government contracts, licenses, permits. The process of nation building is the process of changing those laws, regulations, licenses, permits, contracts, so that they advantage the people who paid for the coup, who paid for the regime change. And that's a tough process that takes a lot of time because you're doing it in a foreign country with foreign peoples in a foreign language in a way that screws them and they're not going to be happy about. So you need all these diplomatic and bribery apparatuses to make enough of them happy to sell out the rest of them. And we will need to do that at a scale never before seen when you're talking about bounty as large as Venezuela and Iran. So while everyone is celebrating this week, I am, to put it charitably, a very hard wait and see. And the omens are, to put it charitably, unclear. That makes sense? All right, we're going to transition into completely different stuff here, but let me trying to think of what kind of song transition I could put on to yeah, okay. I've been listening to the Wallflowers again, so this is what we're doing. We're driving through fog with one headlight, okay?